there is something which is really special. There is a type of sedimentary structure, so it's a structure typical of sedimentary rocks, which is called stromatolite. So stromatolite is a word coming from Greek, and it's from stromatos, layers, and lithos, rock. So it means layered rock. Stromatolites appear in the field as very thin laminae, a few millimeters thin. And you have packages of these laminae, and they could be flat, or they could have a dome shape, or they could have a cone shape. So you look for these laminated features. So here I have actually a stromatolite. So this is a typical stromatolite. So you see laminae, and the laminae are pretty regular, and this is a rock, and the appearance is a layered rock. Now, I am studying these type of rocks, which are relatively young compared to hunting for the earliest evidence for life, because this rock is only 220 million years old. But, having said that, there is something really specific about this stromatolite. So this stromatolite is, as I mentioned, and it's important to bear this in mind, is a sedimentary structure, meaning it's a rock. And sometimes people talk about stromatolites, even referring to stromatolites as synonym of, it's a cyanobacterial mat. No, a cyanobacterial mat is alive. The stromatolite is actually the fossil of a cyanobacterial mat. And this is why it's so important, because stromatolites are believed to be fossilized cyanobacterial mats. So that's what makes all these little layers. And here is why it's so interesting to study the younger samples to gain an understanding of the older samples, those which might preserve life. In a younger sample, where you know, or somehow you have a signature, you have a biomarker of of the fact that those were organisms, and you look with the microscope, then you find specific features. But in that sample I'm studying, the specific feature is more a mineral. And the mineral of the stromatolites I'm studying is dolomite. Dolomite is particularly intriguing because it's a mineral which shouldn't form at surface pressure and temperature. It's a very ordered mineral, so it takes energy for it to form. Imagine you have to put in the structure of the mineral a layer of calcium, a layer of carbonate ions, and the carbonate ions look like a triangle with a carbon at the center and oxygen at the three apexes. So you have a layer of carbonate, then you have to put a layer of magnesium, and then a layer of carbonate. So this precise ordered structure requires to the mineral a lot of energy to form. The most difficult thing to do is also to dehydrate the magnesium. So the magnesium ion is arriving at the surface of the growing crystal, and it's all surrounded by water. And it's very difficult to put such like a fat compound into the structure of the mineral without taking away all the water. So you have to dehydrate it, and how do you do that? And this is the issue about relating dolomite to cyanobacteria. One of the preferred theories today is that you need extra polymeric substances which are sort of a protective membrane around the cyanobacteria. You need those to dehydrate the magnesium and allow the precipitation of the mineral dolomite from seawater. The other thing you can do is evaporation, but you probably still need these extra polymeric substances. So this type of stromatolite is taking us to where do I look for stromatolites. And one of the best things is you look for stromatolites where you have carbonates, and most of the carbonate is a dolomite. So I showed you this, and this is a pretty tough rock. And you see that the layers are parallel. So these stromatolites are parallel laminae. But not all stromatolites are parallel, as I mentioned before. Now, how do you form these laminae? You can form by both precipitating the minerals directly onto the cyanobacterial mat, and then the other thing that they do is they trap the sediment. And then they start again. So precipitation, trapping, precipitation, trapping, precipitation, trapping. And then you form the layer. But you shouldn't think that all stromatolites look like this, because if you go to Shark Bay, which is one of the few places where cyanobacteria exist or are happy in the sea today, they look like this, which has got nothing to do with the sample I've shown you before. So they look like elongated domal structures. And if you look carefully, here, it looks like a mess. But you find that there are trapped bivalves. So these stromatolites is mostly trapping. And the cyanobacteria are here. So this is the stromatolite, it's a rock, and these are the cyanobacteria. They were alive when this was removed. So sometimes you see that you can understand why it is so difficult. Because if I take a thin section of this part, I might just see mud and bivalves. And I do not understand that this is associated to this type of life.